Okay, so we've fatted the piece of wood, we've fatted our mahogany. I'm going to leave this now again, probably for 4 or 5 hours, just to harden off a little bit. I could start the next stage of the polishing process, but I want you to clearly see the stages as we go along. It just looks fantastic, doesn't it? I know those shots that you can see. It's a lovely thing, French polishing. I know some people are against French polishing. I don't really quite understand why. It really lets the colour of the wood shine through, that lovely richness of the timber. That's why they used it so much, certainly during the Victorian and also the Georgian period. It is lovely. Right, I'm going to put now to look after your fad. So if I was to place this down and leave it, it will dry out and go hard. If you put it in an airtight container, a jam jar for instance, just put the lid on, it will stay soft and wet for the next time you go to use it. So you're not wasting material and wasting the product, the polish. It will just stay soft. So yeah, I'll bring it out later on. We'll show what we're going to do with this one. Was there anything else I was going to say? I don't think so. I'll take my gloves off. When I started French polishing, we didn't have any gloves. It felt like the 1880s, but it was actually 1980s. We would just use it bare hands and wash our hands with methylated spirits, but things have moved on since then. Fine. Okay, so we've left this for about 4 or 5 hours now to dry. Ideally, I'd probably leave this for maybe 2 or 3 days actually, just to let the shellac go nice and hard on here. I could, being a French polisher, actually French polish this straight away and build it right up, but again, I want to show you the processes. So I'm going to mark off another area here and we'll go on to the next stage of French polishing, which is colouring. This is the colouring stage. There's staining, grate and fill, fadding, colouring. This is the point if you're in a restoration piece. So if you're restoring a piece of furniture, when you've done all the repairs and things, you got to the stage where you've sealed it up and you think, actually, I want to change the colour slightly, or there are marks and dings and dents or something you want to hide and cover up. This is the point where you do it, where it's been fadded and you can see the colour of the wood. Now I've gouged out an area on this board, really gouged out a nice spot here, so I can demonstrate to you how I would go about filling and colouring it. It's not one I can steam out. Yes, you could steam out dings and dents, but that's a different thing. I've gouged this to fill it to show how we would colour it, and then colouring the whole piece of wood, something the Victorians did an awful lot of. So that's the next process. So I'm going to get some, well, actually the first thing I'm going to do is ever so lightly just cut this back with some 320 grit sandpaper, just lightly get rid of the dust off of it. So I have some 320 grit paper here, silicon carbide paper. It's got a foam back to it. You don't have to have a foam back. It's just that it makes the paper last longer and it's easier to get a nice even pressure when you're sanding. I'm not going to use a block, I'm not hard sanding, I'm just taking the top off of this polished surface here, just taking the edge off of it. So I'm going to place the paper in my hands like so, so I've got control of it, and this is the area that will come in contact with the surface. Again, straight lines over the surface. It will sound horrific, but it's not really doing very much at all. Just ever so lightly taking the tops off the surface. Taking the dust off with the moisture in my hands. You can really see now where I've just lightly gone over the top. It's just highlighted the areas where the planer marks in the surface are really showing up now, where the cabinet maker roughly planed this smooth because it was never intended to be used as a decorative panel. It was always going to be at the back of a linen press or somewhere that wasn't going to be really seen. So they've just left it off the plane, and it really highlights that now. You can really see that when I've just gone over it with the sandpaper. I'll have a little look actually. No, it hasn't. Because it's an undulating surface, also you might think, well, I've just taken off some of the colour, the stain that I've put in there. No, but this is another reason why we go to the colouring stage of French polishing, because you can remedy any mistakes you make at this point here. Maybe I'll just maybe highlight it a bit more actually. Just thinking about this as we're going along. I'm just going to give it a little bit more of a sand and really highlight those areas. I think Ian can pick it up on the camera. Yeah. So even if that has gone through the colour and lightly sanded through, the colouring stage here is where I'll get rid of that and disguise that away. Because that's quite a deep scar there, I'm going to actually dribble in some of our beeswax repair cubes, so a bit of colour into that, just to, because you can remove the wax very easily around that area without damaging it. If I was to use maybe a wood filler, like you can get the 2-part wood fillers that you mix together like car body fillers, it would take quite a bit of sanding and you could create a little bit more damage around the area. I don't want to remove the colour around the area. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some of our beeswax repair cubes here and fill that. I'm going to mask off the area and dribble in some of our repair cube wax. Right, let's do that. So I've covered the area here. I've just encircled the area with some low-tack tape to stop the wax from going anywhere else. So here are our 3 hand-gilded repair cubes: antique gold, rose gold and the pure gold. Now the obvious one to go for, really, here I would have said actually is the darker one of the two. The rose gold, it's close, but I'd rather just go a little bit darker when you're applying it. So this is the one I would use, and I would advise using to anyone. As you can see clearly, it matches in. But for this occasion, only in this instance, because I want to demonstrate something to you, I'm going to use the pure gold, which is clearly completely contrasting to this surface that we've got here, because I want to show you another technique that we use here in the French polishing and restorers workshop of disguising an old repair. So if there was a mark or a ding here that was lighter or something, this is a way I'm going to show you a way of doing it, repairing it. But I'm going to put the pure gold in, which will stand out and will tone that down. Right, we're going to melt just the edge of this repair cube, the pure gold one, because I want to make a big contrast there. I'm just going to gently warm it up. That helps if I put my glasses on to see what I'm doing. There we go. I'm just going to dribble that in. That's it. These are, the repair cubes are made from, tell you what, I'll just lift that up, it makes more sense. 100% pure beeswax. The same wax that goes into our wax polishes. Right, I'm going to use my old credit or debit card, or in this case, my Slimming World card, because obviously, you know, I need to be on Slimming World. They say the camera puts on weight. So I'm just removing the excess and making sure that the wax has filled that cavity. Right, so that's filled that cavity. I'm now going to immediately take off this protective masking tape from around the area. And there you can see the filled area is left behind. Now that's going to be slightly higher than the surrounding wood. So I'm just going to take off the excess very carefully with the edge of the card, just slicing across the face of it. The same way as you work with a chisel, really. So there, that's that cavity filled with beeswax. Don't worry if you get it wrong, just do it again. It's not a problem, it's just natural beeswax. And fill it and smooth it off. I'm now going to demonstrate how I would colour this away had it been there originally. So it's quite contrasting. So I'm going to use my colour palette of pigment powders. I enjoy doing this. Right, let's get them on board. Let's get our colour palette. Brilliant. Okay, so as if by magic, we've had a colouring kit appear, and we've got a close-up camera here to show where the mark is and what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be using pigment powders to colour away this area here. Now, again, these are natural earth colours, raw pigments, the sort of things that would go in to make paints, the real stuff that's dug out of the ground. And I've got a combination of them here, of which there's sort of yellow ochre, yellow chrome, orange chrome, burnt sienna. I'm going to use spirit colours as well, spirit black, spirit red, maybe a bit of spirit oak. They're all in this little handy little colouring tray that I made, and we made in here for me to go and do these sorts of things. And a combination of meths and polish. I actually, just like an artist would do exactly the same way, I'm going to just grain away this area. It should be quite quick, it's only a very small thing. We will do a video of a much bigger repair that you can see the colouring there. Right, let's crack on. Just going to let that dry for a minute or two, and then we'll start colouring. I was holding that in. Right, so let's start with trying to obliterate that white, really. Let's get mixing. So I'm going to use a little bit of meths and a little bit of polish. Just going to dip it in. Okay. This is a squirrel hair brush, sable, or no, not sable, squirrel hair mop. Sorry, little squirrel. But you make beautiful brushes. And we're going to start with, I'll tell you what I'm going to start with, a little bit of titanium white. I know it's light already, but a bit of titanium, a bit more mess, you can't really see that. And then I'm just going to put a bit of yellow ochre in there. Burnt umber. And then a little bit of orange chrome. Smidgen of it. So now I've got one single colour as a base, as a primer if you like. That's what that is. And on top of that then I'm going to layer up colours. So I'm going to wash out all that titanium white, that orange chrome. Let's get rid of all that. A bit more polish on my brush. Then let's go for a bit more burnt umber. Then I'm going to go for, trying to see where it is. I think that might be spirit oak there actually. Is that spirit oak? Yes, it is spirit oak. Put a smidgen of orange chrome in there. You see, I'm starting to make the colour a bit more, what's that, spirit black. Tiny smidge of spirit black. There you are. Not a solid colour anymore. It's translucent sort of colour. Okay. Sometimes is what I've done before is tested it on the surface, see what it looks like, and then it's a bit wet. Spirit red, there's the spirit red. Very strong spirit red. Look how strong that is. Mix it in with those other colours there. Bit of lamp black or powder black in there. Okay, I think we're nearly there. So sometimes it's quite difficult to be able to colour a horizontal surface. You need to look around it from more different angles. You might be able to see something different to what I see. But this is where the next stage of the colouring process comes in. I've toned that down now, sort of faded it away to look like a sort of bit of grain. It's a bit dark, but I'm going to do the next bit of colouring, which is less direct than what we're doing here. So I'm going to leave that. We're going to move on. I'm going to put, we're going to do some extra colouring. That's what we're going to do. Stop waffling. Right, let's wash my brush out. That was one example of detailed colouring using number 2 mop, pencil mop, polisher's mop to colour away a mark. Now this second bit of colouring is where I'm going to apply colour to a more generalised area, and for this again I'm going to use cotton cloth, our cotton, pure cotton open weave cloth, because it's perfect for this situation. Right, let's just rip off, tear off that. Okay. That right there. What I'm going to do is going to make a colour fad. So the same fad I'm using to seal the wood in with shellac, I'm going to make a colour fad. So this time I'm going to use some methylated spirits. I'm going to soak my fad, trying not to splash the surface, with some methylated spirits. So I'm charging it up, same way you sort of charge a battery, I suppose. And you charge with methylated spirits, and I'm going to put a little bit of polish in there. And I'm just going to make sure that's evenly distributed through the fad. Okay. And now I'm going to use spirit colours. Now these are pigment powders that are dissolvable by methylated spirits, and depending how much powder or how much meth is, depends how concentrated it is. This is fairly concentrated. If I come in here, you'll be able to see it. I'm just going to dribble on a small amount of, that is spirit oak. And this one is spirit black. And just a tiny amount gone on there. And then going back to this onion board, I'll bring it in front of the camera and I'll squeeze it out. There, look at that. So you can see the colour, look at those colours there. It's only a small amount of colour. I'm going to add a bit more meths. A bit more meths going in. And now, as evenly distributed throughout the fad, I'm going to apply it to the surface, the entire surface, working with the grain and working very quickly, because I don't want the meths to burn into the polish and soften it up. I'm going to come off at the end, so that's going to move all these bits and pieces out of the way. Okay, I'm going to start putting my hand behind the back. Oh, by the way, I've secured the piece of wood so it doesn't move now, so it shouldn't move. So that was really quick. Imagine if you had a really big piece of furniture, you could work quickly all around it. And this just adds a little bit of colour, but generally all over it. And you can keep on repeating this process, just adding a bit more colour. You'll still see the grain because it's very subtle, the amount of colour that's going on. You're building it up. A lot of furniture manufacturers will cheat at doing this. So you might use a cheaper piece of wood or multiple different colour pieces of cheaper wood, and then they won't even stain it. They'll just go straight to the first process, or the second, third process even, fadding. They'll seal it up, then colour it with a spray colour, so obliterating it almost, and then putting another finish over the top, so it all looks like a uniform colour. You think you've got a lovely piece of rosewood or mahogany, and actually underneath is much lighter, cheaper wood. I see it all the time. Right, let's give this another go. I'm going to start this end and work across that way then. I've got to work quick because it is really heavily meths based and French polishes on the surface, and it softens the surface really, really quickly. Got a lovely colour, it really has. You might hear this term as well, read about this term. It's where you burn the surface. And in French polishing terms, it's where it's been burnt with meth, too much meth in your fad or your rubber. As you're working the surface, the meth is going in, burning it off, and you end up with a patchy edge to it, or a patchy area that looks dull. It's where there's meth, too much meth has gone in, you work the area too slowly and burnt the surface. It's in effect called burning. Every time I pass over, a little thin layer of colour going on. It's thoroughly enjoyable once you get the feel of how the fad works and how it interacts with the surface. It sort of glides over it. Once it gets the right balance of methylated spirits and you get the right speed, it's sort of, you work in harmony with the piece and you really start to get a feel of it, and that's what's happening now with me here. It's lovely. I haven't done it for ages. And it's just really nice to do. You can see the richness of that wood still showing through. It's got a really dark, rich, sort of, I don't know, it's that dark red wine, burgundy colour that's coming through there. Like an antique mahogany, a really rich antique mahogany colour. When I first started French polishing, my mentors are a bit mean to me actually. They'd always make sure, or not make sure, they wouldn't let me start rubbering. They would make me get a French polish finish just by using cotton wadding, or this cotton cloth that we have. And they wouldn't let me use any oil. But yeah, we've all got stories of how our apprenticeships were quite hard. But look at that, it's really got a lovely richness from this angle. I don't know if you can see it from that angle, but the lights here bouncing off, just lovely. So this is colouring. Other French polishers might do it a different way. This is the way I was taught. It's a way of controlling it nicely. Steam train's running. You can see I'm still working in the direction of the grain. I'm lifting off ever so slightly when I come to the ends and then just making contact. Just touching down, up, down. It's just natural for me to do it now. And I can keep on doing this. What it's doing is slowly, also at the same time as applying the colour, is pushing the polish into the grain as well. And the more the polish goes into the grain, the richer and more depth there is to the colour and the look of the wood. This is why French polishing and French polish was just such a great finish for the last couple of 100 years. Beautiful finish. Now I could add some more colour to this fan. I could end up going darker and darker and darker, but I think there's enough colour on there. What I am going to do to seal that colour in is I'm going to add a little bit more shellac to it. So I'm going to put a bit more special pale polish into this colour fag because I want to seal that colour in. Train's going to go by. Okay, I think we're going to leave it there because I do any more it would be almost ebony, but there's a lovely richness to that. I'm going to let this dry now overnight, and then we'll come back and we'll start looking at the bodying process, which is the next process of French polishing. I quite enjoyed that. That was very enjoyable.